To order, and we'll open the meeting, and I'll ask James Daniels to do a karakia opening for us, please. Yes, thank you, kia ora.
Tūtawa mai runga, tūtawa mai raro, tūtawa mai roto, tūtawa mai waho, kia tau mai te mauri tū, te mauri ora i te katoa. Ahau, hui e.
Tai kia ora. And welcome everyone. This is our first committee meeting since February, so it's good to be back. Yeah. So we have an apology for absence today from Tim Scandrett, the Mayor, for lateness because she's attending a government announcement on behalf of the council this morning, so she'll be in, I think, around 10 this morning. And James may need to leave at 11:30. You're leaving if we haven't finished already?
We'll see how it goes. So I don't think
Great. And we've got Catherine. I'll just move those apologies first. Do I have a seconder? Sorry, Abe. I'm sorry, Yanni. Early departure, 10:30. Is that right? Yeah. So I'll move those apologies. Seconded Aaron. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's carried. And this morning we've got Catherine Chu by Zoom. So are you there, Catherine?
Morena.
Welcome. Kia ora. All right, so we'll all go. Declarations of interest, reminding members to be vigilant. If there are any declarations, just speak up during the meeting. Now we've got some previous minutes from the February meeting, 25th of February 2020. I have a mover for those. Melanie, seconded Andrew. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's carried. There's no public forum today, and there's no deputations, no petitions. So we'll move on to the minutes for the Zone Committee minutes, items 7 to 11. I'll move those all together. Do I have a seconder? Sarah, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, that's carried. And if there's anything arising from those minutes, we've got the representatives from the Zone Committees here this morning to speak, and that brings us to items 9, 10, 11 and 12. So I'll welcome the Zone Committee members to come to the table. We've got Les Walhola and, sorry, who have we got there? Gina. And Kevin Brown is coming back in. So Gina, Deputy Chair, Banks Peninsula. Les is Selwyn Waihora, Zone Committee member, and are you Chair out there? Co-Chair. And Kevin Brown he's the Chair from the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee. So welcome, guys. Thank you very much for coming in and speaking today. So do you want to just perhaps talk us through the highlights of your reports? And either of you can go first. Who would you like? Gina, okay, cheers.
So the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee has continued to be active this year. We were able to continue over lockdown and we've been back up and running since. Some key highlights are we've recommended funding for 4 excellent immediate steps projects. There is great uptake for that fund on Banks Peninsula, but that does mean we continue to get more applications than the $100,000 available can fund. The Whakaora Healthy Harbour Plan has been progressing well with good tie-in to the community and community groups like reserve committees through the Community Advisory Group. The main project that's currently underway is the restoration of Steadfast Stream in Cass Bay with recent clearing of willows and poplars and a planting day held this month. The upper reaches are already protected and we're working to make this stream restored ki uta ki tai from the mountains to the sea. Similarly, a planting day was held at Kokararata in Port Levy, which will also see Kokararata stream protected ki uta ki tai with a covenant in the upper reaches and the lower reaches fenced and planted. These projects that restore and protect waterways along their length are deliberate. The Zone Committee is seeking to work a bit more strategically, and we recognise that the biodiversity and water quality benefits are often not realised until the whole waterway is treated ki uta ki tai. So this will allow us to showcase those waterways, to show what can be done, and hopefully provide evidence that the treatments we're implementing are effective. We're still developing this concept further and hoping that by focusing on priority catchments, we can achieve greater buy-in from the community and also open up opportunities for more co-funding from other organisations. I've seen the success of this approach firsthand with the Whakaora Head of the Harbour project, which saw pretty much every landowner on the Allendale stream attend a shed meeting with willingness from everyone to be involved. Previously, a lot of our projects have been ad hoc, treating only a small part of a waterway, especially when trying to be fair about allocating the money geographically. As a committee, we've welcomed Rick Tainui as the Runanga rep for Onuku, and this year we've had Lan Farm as our ECAN councillor rep and Irena Riddle as our youth member to provide a voice for youth. We're continuing to work on engaging with the community through events and through contact with landowners through the zone delivery team. And we plan to hold an event on carbon farming, the emission trading scheme and planting for erosion control with beef and lamb on October 9th. The main item that I wanted to draw your attention to today is the roadside cuttings trial, which is mentioned in both the annual and quarterly reports. This trial looks at a range of techniques to reduce erosion from roadside cuttings, including rock tows, planting along the top of the cutting, and various planting and substrate options that are applied to the face of the cutting. And that's then monitored over 3 years to assess the effectiveness of the different components. This trial is very important to the Zone Committee, to Whakaora and to Ngāti Wheki in Rapaki. We appreciate that Council has agreed to continue to fund the existing trial site in the Christchurch Adventure Park and understand why budgets have tightened, resulting in the other 2 proposed trial sites not being funded at this stage. However, these exposed roadside cuttings have existed for decades. Many people have been pushing to have them remediated for a long time with little traction, and these trials were seen as a way forward, as a lack of evidence has often been cited as a reason for not doing anything about them. So whether more trial sites are funded or the findings from the current trial site are used to develop a work program that could work either way, but we would really like to see a plan and a time frame for addressing these cuttings so that action can be taken in the harbour within a reasonable time frame. That's all from me.
Thank you. So, Kevin. Oh, or Les, sorry, you go. Les. Yep. Yep. Welcome, Kevin. Oh, it's Kevin.
Meeting for this year, I'd like to mention some of the successes that we had last year. Firstly, we ran a series of bus trips which traced a drop of water from the intake right up as far west as you can go. For the protection zone, we traced that series from drop of water right through to Christchurch's drinking water. And we finished at Bell Creek and talked about the urban stream syndrome, and we looked at the treatment station that we've got at Richardson Terrace. These were extremely well attended. They were, everybody was very pleased to talk, and a lot of people were quite surprised to see where their water came from and how it comes out of the Waimak area and the ground. So that was very successful. We had about 70 people, and we'd like to run some more of those again next year. We became the first signatory to the Community Waterways Partnership Charter in August last year. Pleased to see the City Council joined in December 2019, and ECAN and the councillors are considering the opportunity to join next month. We ran sediment workshops to educate construction people about the risk in the Port Hills and how they impact on the East Coast as sediment, and how to prevent this and how to clean up the East Coast. These were extremely well attended and they were appreciated very much by the construction industry. One of the most important things we did, I think, is to raise awareness about the possibility of low nitrates in colorectal cancer. There's a correlation that's been published, and seeing these effects of an increase in colorectal cancer at levels of 1 ppm. Now, this is important for Christchurch because under Plan Change 7, where the water is coming underneath the Waimaka area into the groundwaters for Christchurch's drinking water, the limits that they are working towards in the 30-year plan are 3.8 parts per million of nitrate. So we're quite pleased. We wrote a letter to the Ministry of Health. We got a letter, one letter back that was very stable, saying we know what we're doing. They eventually appointed, after we wrote another letter, they appointed a scientific advisor to the Minister of Health, and he came up with a recommendation, and now they've freed up some money for Otago University to do a study, or it's a research study on the correlation between colorectal cancer and nitrate levels in Canterbury. So this is important not only for Christchurch City, but also for all of Canterbury Plains, where most of the farmers and people living in the country are living off wells, and the private wells are never tested, and some of them have very large nitrate levels. So that is an important issue. We got a remit passed last year at the local body conference to reduce the copper in the brake pads for cars. This is the main source of copper in stormwater that we use up in our streams. We had lots of stormwater superhero appearances at community gatherings, and we awarded 6 industries with awards for their work in coping with stormwater. So that was very nice as well. So recent highlights this year, we've only had 2 meetings and workshop because of COVID. We had a workshop on biodiversity funding, which we decided to introduce the concept of having a priority catchment that would receive a large proportion of the biodiversity funding in order, in order to make significant changes to that particular catchment. And while we're doing that, we're still keeping a rebate back to encourage work in other catchments in the following years. One of the big things, we set up a working group comprising zone committee members from the Cashmere Stream Care Group and the Pawaho Heathcote River Network and the community boards. These meet once a month, and we already have a submission from them. They meet once a month, and they're working towards cleaning up the stormwater in the Heathcote, particularly the sediment. And they are working towards it, and there will be a more focused series of suggestions coming to the council as a result of these meetings very soon. Finally, we gave a very special honorary Stormwater Superhero Award to Evan Smith, who was unfortunately not very well at the moment for his work on the Otakawa Asian River. He's a true, he has been, still is a true champion for the river, and he's appeared many times before the zone committee for his work through
Thank you, Kevin. Les.
I'll take my report as read and welcome any questions on it. There's just a couple of 3 highlights I'd like to point out. Over last year, we did a lot of community and youth work in our zone and trying to find them. We took our meetings around the Rohi, but unfortunately there wasn't very much participation by the community. We're hoping to work on that for a bit more highlighting through council, especially Southern District Council, where they can highlight what the zone committee is about. And we might get a few more community members at our meetings. It's the first part of the year it's been a real funny year. We've only had 2 or 3 meetings for the whole year. Up to now with COVID-19 and that, but they've been very effective meetings, and the fact that we are now looking from not so much what's happened in the last 10 years, that was the setting up the zone committees. We're now wanting to look what can happen, what can come from those 10 years to make the real improvement. we have a co-chair situation. New co-chair lived alongside myself, was Fiona McDonald. She's a community worker and community representative, and she really specialty is working with the community groups. Last year was meeting hands, and myself and Megan took the farm side of it, and I took the greening side of it, and that worked really well. And I think this, with Fiona being there, it's going to work even better to have that communication with the community. We approved a heck of a lot of immediate steps. We put our whole budget out last year, and we're certainly well on the way of blowing it out this year. In fact, we probably had more applicants than we had money. It's unfortunately that the money dropped over the last couple of years, and we couldn't carry any money forward. Once you don't spend it, you lose it. That's something that happens. We did a lot of plantings with the Gerard Kakariki. You look at the maps that we got and you can see that there are hundreds of thousands of trees planted from the Alps right through to the wetlands.
Sorry to interrupt, Liz. Can you please put your microphones on because we can't pick it up on the live stream? Just push the button, any button. Yeah. It's not on. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, now we're there.
Apologise for that interruption.
And we are, and that's what I was saying. I've been involved with these schools going out and planting. It's just fantastic to see how much the children do enjoy planting. In fact, when we go out to a site, we'll have 3 or 4 stations where they have weaving, water ecology, and planting or something else. But all want to do the planting. don't want to do the other stuff. But it's really fantastic working with them. Yeah. We've discussed the Huratini halls or stormwater management with Paul Dixon. We weren't quite sure where the Huratini halls will fit into our zone. We knew where the majority it was, but we've since found out that the whole of the Huratini is in the Solon zone, of its Solon responsibility, not necessarily in the zone. So we want to get Paul back sometime and discuss where what we can do to help the sediment and stuff in the Huratini. I'd like to Tiara wetlands. I've been out there, I've been involved with it right from the start, and just out there last week with a couple of schools, and it's a fantastic area now operating. The water unfortunately is quite low in the Huratini at the moment, so there's not much water flowing through. But if you ever have an opportunity to go out there, it's at the end of Nels Road at the Motakara. Just walk along the rail trail and have a look at it. It's a real nice area. Thousands of plants been put in. So that's something we're really looking forward to. It's been a prominent Mahunga Kai site in the future. Welcome any questions.
Oh, really good reports. Thank you very much. The just a question. The Hayton stream flows into the Huratini, doesn't it?
Sorry?
The Hayton stream that flows into Huratini, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's a lot of all those streams, right from Prewarton, actually from Springs Road, is where Huratini starts.
Yeah, right. The
Oh,
Heathcote.
yes.
I always get them mixed up.
Oh, that's right.
Right, thank you. Hey, well, thank you for those really good reports. I just want to pick up on the roadside cutting trial that you mentioned, Gina, and whether you've read the rest of our report, it has been funded for the annual plan. and it will be an LTP matter if we want to take that further, and we manage to find the funding for that. So we probably can't give you do you want to plan in a time frame for the second and third, or for this first one?
So the first one in the Christchurch Adventure Park, I
Yeah.
understand that that's being funded and
Yes.
going ahead and will be completed. So it was more a question around, given that the additional 2 trial sites that were identified are currently not being funded,
Yeah.
it was just a question around what happens next.
Yeah. Okay.
Just to make sure that it doesn't, that we don't just have this one trial site that is at the Adventure Park, it's not actually in Whakaraupo. And, we want to make sure that something is done to address those roadside cuttings.
Yes, and I understand that. So I'm just wondering how we won't be able to give you an update until our LTP is signed off, really. So, but if we make a note of that to keep the Bank Peninsula Committee informed about that progress, I think that's the best we can do at this stage.
Yeah, thank you.
So, are there any other questions for the committee? Yanni?
Is this from all the committees, or you just...
For any of them, yep.
So I was just quite alarmed to see the issue around sediment and erosion control, and we're being asked to talk to our staff over that, and I just wondered if you could. So we're being asked to communicate to staff that the Cashmere Stream Port Hills catchments that drain into Cashmere Stream be considered a priority catchment when carrying out building inspections, processing consents, deciding on consents to be prioritised for monitoring. I was just really, I guess, trying to understand a little bit more specifically around what it is that we're not doing, and why that hasn't been more of a priority, if you've been given any reason.
So can I just interrupt there, because I spoke to Kevin before this, and there is a word missing from that resolution, and it's the word compliance. Should be considered a priority compliance catchment area. So would you like to speak to that, Kevin?
I wasn't actually present at the meetings. What we're looking for is just to treat the Heathcote as a priority for compliance. That's all.
But okay, I guess what I'm trying to understand, like, given that I've been raising this for about 3 years now,
Yeah.
and certainly since the Port Hill fires,
Yeah.
why isn't this happening? Have you been given any reason why it's not a priority?
Come up to the microphone, Shelley. Thank
The
you.
Cashmere Working Group of the Zone Committee will be coming back to you within the next couple of months with some more specific recommendations. We have been given an update by City Council and Environment Canterbury staff, and that will form the basis of those recommendations that the working group is working on next Tuesday.
Okay, well, just I guess a follow-up question. Are there cases where council's enabling works to happen without the appropriate conditions of consent? Is that really what is at the heart of this issue?
The issue has many, many factors ranging from consent conditions to capability of staff and contractors in the industry, as well as how things may, there's different laws that the City Council use and ECAN uses, and all sorts of different factors relating to both regulation and non-regulation.
Okay, and can I just check, is there any council consents that you're concerned with, or you've identified as being a reason for concern?
Probably not the best reason to talk about that, but I think there probably has been some concerns about water coming from the bottom of Cashmere Valley drain around Cashmere Estates.
Okay. Well, can I just ask, we've got a report later on today which does touch on one of those. I think, can we actually do something about this? I just find it incredible that we're relying on a community group to tell us stuff that we've been raising at a governance level repeatedly.
So the recommendation is that we communicate this issue with staff. Shelley's just told us that there's more work to be done on this, I believe. Yeah, is that correct? And it's about, from what I hear, it's about joining up the two organisations so that we're both resourced and we're working together more efficiently with all these issues like the inspections, the consenting and processing the consents. So I'm not sure what more we can really do. Shelley, who's
But isn't this bread and butter like what council should be doing? Like when we
Well,
approve
it's
consents, we should
both.
monitor them.
It's both councils. So we're trying to work together on that.
And I think that's really important. It's actually us working with ECAN to work out whose responsibility is sitting where and who's got those powers. But recognise also that we, and Helen will report on that when she brings her, we are doing a huge amount of work at the bottom of the catchment stream to actually look at capturing silt, and that work is still in progress, and I'm not sure when it will do, but certainly she'll be able to give you an idea of what we're doing at the global scale. But this basically, I think, is discussions around inspection of building sites and all that sort of thing, which we are working with.
So shouldn't we be referring this to the Regs and Consents Committee? And given that they're supposed to be doing an audit, which I've been told is no longer happening, of consents, shouldn't we actually be asking like one or two of these Port Hill subdivision type consents get put into an independent audit so that we can have confidence that we're acting appropriately?
Well, this report is asking us to communicate this to staff, so that staff could be the compliance team or the consenting committee, if you want, and that might be appropriate. So what we can do, these are the zone committee recommendations. We can bring our own recommendations out of this that we choose to pick up if we like. So I'm happy to do that if everyone else is okay.
I think we should ask for a report on what is actually being done, because it's not correct that nothing's been done. There is an element of being done by ourselves and by ECAN, and in actual fact they may come up with an idea of what's been done and how it could be enhanced, and we are at all levels of the organisation in those discussions quite significantly. We've and a lot of that was also incorporated when we got the comprehensive stormwater consent. A number of those conversations continued. So it's not correct that nothing's been done. It's a matter of how do we get the best value and the best controls, and making it clear to people what they need to do.
Well, councillors will be aware of the other email that we got today or last night, and I think people are becoming increasingly concerned at the way in which we're doing consenting and monitoring. But I wondered whether we also need to adopt the same resolution to go towards ECAN, or maybe the zone committee does that as well.
The zone committee reports
so
to
have they
ECAN.
put the same wording, communicate to ECAN staff around this being a priority catchment?
Is that correct? Have you sent these recommendations to the
They will go to, yes, they go to.
Thank you, that's good. So I suggest that rather than a report, Dave, that this committee requests a memo from staff on the
What's been done and what
It needs to be an independent
the
audit.
current state of what's been done and what has been planned to be done around sediment control and enforcement, and then also to refer the zone committee recommendation 3A to the consenting committee. What's it called? Reg and consent? Reg and compliance, isn't it? What's it called?
Yes. David will get the words right. Won't you, David?
Thanks, Yanni. Anne.
Kevin, Gina and Liz, thanks for coming in. I'm interested, Kevin, in that you have extremely well attended meetings, and I'm wondering what you're doing that's encouraging people to come along, because it's one of the struggles I think we certainly do have with, as Liz was saying, getting people along, and it would be great to just understand a bit about what you do.
Ooh.
Is it the food?
Could very well be the food. I don't honestly know. We try to keep in touch with the community, and we spend a lot of time being present at community activities like Meet in the Middle, things like that. And I think that's probably it. We do try to keep in touch with the community.
And how do you do that? Do you through local newspapers, or what
No,
sort of things do you do?
no, mainly by personal attendance with zone committee members through all sorts of community organisations. Yeah, it's something we're trying to branch out so that we find at the moment we're preaching to the choir, and we'd like to reach the people that aren't in the choir, and have a bit more of an education campaign for stormwater and river water and so on. So it's we're trying to put together a communications package that we can get to the people that don't come to the meetings in particular.
That would be terrific. Once you've got that done, to share that, that would be very good and helpful, I'm sure.
Well, it seems to be quite difficult, really, getting hold of the people that you really want to educate. Yeah.
Oh, okay, right. Okay, so are there any other questions? Because we've got some wording up. Oh, Melanie?
More for staff around the video. Like, how likely is that to happen?
Sorry?
I've got a question for staff around creating the short video about the Cashmere Stream and the work that's been happening with land drainage.
Yeah. We've already got 1 or 2 videos. We're going to...
We've got a couple of videos about the work that we've been doing, particularly around the Cashmere Stream. So we're going to distribute those to the zone committee and then see what we could do in the way of enhancement. I think one of the issues that we've got potentially is how do we promote them more out into the market, but there may be other things that we can fill in, and we certainly do videos as we progress work, but again, it's something that we're absolutely willing to show what we've got and then see how we can enhance that. So,
yeah, but those videos are good. I think they're really helpful. Liz?
Is Pauline, is one thing very important I forgot to mention in my report. The Central Plains Waikirikiri recharge is returning the taps on next month. I don't remember the precise date to see how that system works. It's very important that we get something water flowing evenly down to Waikirikiri and to Te Waiora, and I think it's a very important stage where we get to actually turn the taps on and get that water flowing.
Yeah, so that's from the Central Plains storage system.
Yeah, no, not from the storage, direct from the pipe, from the Rakaia through to the system. There's a pipe halfway along, big opening gates, and we just go there and turn the taps on. It floods a bit of an area that then drains down into the gravel and stones and all that, and goes into actually shallow water at this type of thing, and this flows along to the river, and we're not directly mixing water that way. So that's going to bring the level, especially when it's going to go on in the winter more than summer. But time it gets down to Selwyn, down to Code Ford, Chamberlain's Ford, and that, it's going to be early summer, so it's going to enhance all the whole area right along.
Well, there'll be a lot of people very pleased to see that water back there.
Oh, we've been working on it for a long time.
That's significant. Thanks for mentioning that, Liz. That's great. Okay, so if there are no more questions, we've got a couple of... Should we put a couple of recommendations up in response? So we've got one there, number 5, and I'd just like to
actually need an independent audit. Like, we need to have confidence at a governance level that, I mean, everyone got the email last night, right, from someone around, I mean...
So you want an independent audit on what?
We absolutely need an independent audit.
On what?
On our consenting process around earthworks, particularly around sediment and erosion control.
I want to do that first of all, Yanni, and then they can perhaps come back to us with a comment. So I recommend that we request a memorandum from staff. There we go. Almost around the control. I think the zone committee refer the zone committee recommendation 3A to the Reg and Performance Committee, and then can we put a note at the bottom that staff update the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee regarding the 2nd and 3rd trial on the what's it called? what's it called, Gina? The bank,
The roadside cutting.
roadside cutting, thank you.
So just to put it in context, a student project previously identified that there are about 4 high priority cuttings in the harbour and about 9 sort of moderate high. So we're talking about trial sites, but
Yeah.
you know there are sort of 10 to 15 that
Yeah, I know.
really
We'll,
could do
we'll
with
see
some
how we go with
treatment.
the second and third trial on the roadside cutting after the LTP has been signed off, after the City Council LTP has been signed off. And 7, request staff to formally respond to the Zone Committee recommendations.
I just wonder if that first one would be better to actually report back to them about the results of the first trial and how that will be carried forward. And it may be carried forward into a second and third trial. It may be carried forward actually into some change of practice that we do. It may go forward into our subdivisional standards so that we do it. I just wonder whether we're better to actually report back a bit broader than just that, say the results and how that will be brought forward and what we're going to carry into the LTP,
Okay.
because I think
So-
it might be more than...
That's fine. So let's
Does that
put
make sense?
That sounds
6, that staff report back to the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee on the results of the first trial.
And where to from here, and possibly,
Well, that will be part of the update.
Yeah.
Report back to the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee on the results of the first road cutting site trial, and then leave the rest of it in there too.
Will we want the report back to our committee as well, this committee?
it'll come through to you. I'm not sure, Helen, whether it comes through in the 2 monthly report, but it will come back to you in some form, and I think it'll come back to this committee rather than, because it is a water initiative, even though it's on the roading network.
No, respond to the zone committee on their recommendations. And no, that staff formally respond to the zone committee on their recommendations.
Yeah.
Does that? It's just giving them a response that we've received and everything. Andrew.
Item 6, is that subject to update, or is that what we've got there as the item 6 that we're about to, is that what's on the table, or is it something different just after the advice that Dave gave? Because what's actually needed here is a report back on the results of the first trial, so that can then inform either a change to the way that we manage roadside cuttings based on the results of that first trial, or the need for a second and third trial. Whereas what we've got here assumes there's going to be a second and third trial. That's actually not the case. I mean, the ideal in many ways would be the first trial, informs the way we deal with roadside cuttings, in which case we want to implement those improvements immediately, and there may not be a need for a second or third trial. There may be a need for a second or third trial, in which case we'll have one and we'll fund one, or that's what the position of the Zone Committee would be. So I think what we need to do is to say there, staff report back to the Banks Peninsula Zone Committee on the results of the first trial as soon as possible, and advise next steps regarding implementation of the results and whether a second or third trial site is needed. Regarding how the results can be implemented.
Is needed and or funded, because that's the issue too.
Well, I mean, I'd kind of take the view that the funding's a separate matter. Once we've determined the need, then we look at the funding. Regarding how the results can be implemented.
Well, that would be all in the reporting back. I don't think we need
And
to
once
pull
it's
that
specified here, I know there's a letter coming which is going to address exactly this issue, so it'll be good to have resolution here that we can refer to when we reply to the letter that we know is coming.
All right, look, I just might bring Clive up. Thank you, Clive. If you could just get to near a microphone.
Can I just get that wording the way that I've asked for it to be, unless there's any objection to that?
Okay, could you repeat that, please?
So just regarding how the results can be implemented. No, where you've got advise next steps regarding how the results can be implemented.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that represents reality, and it also allows us to address a matter which is going to be raised with the Chief Executive in a letter.
And take out of the results and leave the rest, is that right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, Clive, because there's 1, 2, 3 trials planned, are the second and third depending on the first, or were they always meant to happen anyway?
The reason that the trial is located in the adventure park is because the sites that were identified around the road on Littleton Harbour were found to be a health and safety issue with transport. To be able to put those trials in place and to monitor them. And also there was a concern about vandalism of those trials on a public roadside. So that's why the adventure park site was chosen in the first instance. And I would like to point that the trial that we have will be fully completed by June of next year, and the full report will be available in July. So if we're going to provide a memo in response to how the trial is going, we can give you an interim monitoring report of what we've currently got.
So that's going to be too late for any funding for the LTP if we're relying on the end result of that first trial, isn't it? So maybe an interim report might be enough for us to look at funding further trials and getting that money built in.
Correct. It can help us inform our final decisions as to where we want to go.
So when did you say there'd be an interim report ready?
Well, my understanding is that there's monitoring of the trial every 6 months. So we should be having I'll ask my counterpart, you can. Shelley, do you know when the next monitoring is? Okay, so we'll be able to have an interim report that covers the first year of the trial being in place.
By?
Whenever we can slot into the schedule, I would imagine.
Great, so it's sort of ready nowish. So
we should be able to get something, yes.
Okay, all right, well that's really helpful. So there will be an interim report, so how are we
So maybe
looking?
we need to reflect that in that resolution. I mean, one of two things. The zone committee would...
Interim results, yeah.
The zone committee would take a view that one of two things needs to happen here. Either a second or possibly third trial needs to be funded in the LTP, or the way that we manage roadside cuttings to reduce sedimentation needs to be taken account of in the LTP.
Yep.
So it's one or the other.
Yep.
What
So
we don't want is to get to the end of the first trial and then nothing happens.
Yep. So I think we've captured that in that resolution. Andrew, you happy with that now? And thanks for your help with that.
Thank you.
Okay. So if there are any other questions, do we have a mover for the recommendations? Sarah? Seconded? Melanie? All those in favour say, any debate? Yanni?
I just want to touch on the sediment issue because as someone who has watched the Pauaho Heathcote River, it is really obvious that there's a huge issue with sediment. And, I just think as a council, we need to start taking these things seriously. Like, in my view, it's completely unacceptable the length of time we've taken to do more around that sediment runoff, particularly after the Port Hill fires. So, I guess I'm happy that the zone committee has drawn this to our attention, but I'm disappointed that they've had to do that when this has repeatedly been raised as an issue, and it feels like we're still at sort of starting blocks of actually doing anything constructive about it. But I think the other thing is we need to understand that sometimes because of our culture as a council, it's hard for us to be critical of things that we do ourselves, and I think that's just normal kind of human behaviour. So sometimes having a degree of independence around an audit is actually a really important step forward. And, you know, think of the Ombudsman's report into transparency and so on. So, you know, it's not to criticise staff, but it's really simply trying to get a new approach to actually looking at what we need to do, ensuring that it's resourced properly, because I just cannot accept that as a council that's constantly said, you know, the Heathcote Apawaho and our water quality is a priority, that we would be in a situation today where we're now being asked to make one of these catchments a priority, because it seems clear that there's something not quite right about what we're doing. I know that sediment control and erosion is difficult, but actually, given that we got this email last night from a planner, I think there's a number of concerning things. And, you know, in conclusion, this council asked for a regular audit of our consents to ensure that we were doing best practice and not having gaps in what we were doing. And that project, as I understand it, still hasn't been complete, may not have even been started, and I've been told the budget was cut. So, you know, if we want to improve and be a world-class council and do things properly, I think we do need the ability to look at ourselves and constructively look at where we're not meeting certain objectives and put in place measures that will. And so I feel really upset about this erosion and sediment issue, because it has been repeatedly raised at a governance level around this table, council and committees, when we've had the zone committees coming in for at least the last 3 years, and we're only now saying to staff, make it a priority, which, you know, is very, very disappointing. So I look forward to what more we can do on this. We need to actually get on top of it. It is not acceptable for the sort of runoff that's happening, and we just really need to step up our game.
Thanks, Yanni. Andrew, then Anne.
Yeah, I certainly agree with many of the comments that Yanni has made regarding erosion and sedimentation. And as Gina mentioned, in the context of the health of Littleton Harbour, this is something that's been raised by community members and people on various working parties for many, many years. We're currently running this trial in the Adventure Park, which will inform the way that we deal with our roading assets, and in particular roadside cuttings, which are a significant source of sedimentation that finds its way into the harbour. We are a signatory and a partner in the Whakaora Healthy Harbour Whole of Harbour Catchment Management Plan. That document identifies that sedimentation runoff from our road assets, and in particular from these roadside cuttings, is a significant source of sedimentation ingress into the harbour. So, you know, the reason for my particular focus on Resolution 6 there is so that the trial that we are running actually finally brings about some benefits and an improvement in the health of the harbour, because we're taking steps to reduce the sedimentation runoff from our own roading assets, leading by example, and actually contributing meaningfully to the work that we've signed up to as part of the Whakaora aspirations, and as a responsible manager of our own assets.
I agree, thank you. Anne.
Kia ora. I just wanted to I guess commend the Zone Committee in terms of the focus on engagement and education. I think it's really important that, particularly with our young people, to get them involved at these sort of grassroots type activities, and getting them to know about their waterways and to taking responsibility for them. And it would be great to really focus on that, I think, and strengthen the partnership with the Clive's initiative, and really work together. I think that's the way forward. So thanks for the work that you're doing there, and I look forward to hearing a little bit more about how we can encourage and support each other as zone committees in that work. Sharing information would be good. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Anne. You look, I mean, these are huge problems and huge issues, and I don't think we should be begging our own organisation or other organisations. We've got massive challenges with pollutants and contaminants in water, and in our Christchurch city, a lot of it is historical, and things were not done right in the old days, and we're cleaning up, and the zone committees do a lot of that cleaning up, and the communities are cleaning up, and I really want to thank you guys for coming and giving us your time today and speaking to us. I think it's really valuable. I think we're all starting to work together really, really well. And I'd like to read out something that you've written as well, which is At its February meeting, the Zone Committee also heard about the substantial efforts undertaken by the Christchurch City Council, the Parks and Landscapes team, with bank stabilisation and naturalisation to the Cashmere Stream, which in conjunction with the committee's immediate steps funding is helping the Cashmere Stream Group to restore native riparian cover and improve native biodiversity around the stream. And the committee wishes to thank the Christchurch City Council for its contribution to this work. And thank you for those words. I think we've really got to recognise what each other is doing. We're doing it all together and we are making progress. And we've got to keep that in mind. But at the same time, we do have to keep our eye on the ball, and I think the compliance one is something that we've raised today through your report. So thank you very much. All right, on that note, I will put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. 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 Opposed? That's carried. Thanks again. All right, that takes us to item 14. Am I right there? No, 13. Okay. Sorry, the Three Waters report. And that Helen Beaumont come to the table. Thank you, Helen. Thank you for this novel. It's a beauty.
Good morning. Yeah, the report that's in front of you is the report to the end of June last year. So it's been a little delayed by things outside of our control, and some of it, of course, has been overtaken by more recent events and reports to Council. In terms of looking back on the last year, we delivered approximately 85% of our capital program in Three Waters, and that was a little lower than we would have liked, but some of it was due to the COVID-19 shutdown and then the consequential impacts on that program. In terms of the operational expenditure, we did manage expenditure within budget, and again, some of that was actually the benefit of the shutdown, so there was some saving there in terms of the work program. There's a section in the report on central government reform that, of course, has been overtaken by the meeting of Council yesterday, and for us now the focus is on delivery against the funding that we expect to receive, and advice back to Council on participating in that reform program. So we will incorporate that into our bi-monthly report in the future to ensure that you're up to date with what is happening, and then there'll be other individual reports if there are specific issues that require advice and recommendations and decisions back from Council.
Yep.
In terms of the Section 17A report, again, that report was received, debated, and decisions made at Council yesterday. And there are next steps that we will be addressing and once again bringing back to this committee and other committees of Council. One of the biggest ones is the procurement plan. One of the triggers for the Section 17A report, of course, was that the operations and maintenance contracts for Three Waters are coming to an end, and we need to put together a procurement plan for what happens next, and we need to do that in the context of the reform program and the timetables that central government has put on us. So those reports will come up to you and the options for how we go about that procurement. Another area of work that comes out of the detailed Section 17A is continuing on the climate change adaptation and mitigation in terms of what Three Waters can do. So there are of course, our wastewater treatment plant is one of the biggest contributors of greenhouse gases for the city and the city's footprint. So there are a number of projects underway to look at what we can do there. But we also want to take a much more programmed response, a more comprehensive response to what we do about infrastructure. So that's both embedded carbon in our infrastructure, but also the operational carbon that results from the infrastructure decisions that we make. And that needs to happen right back in the design phase. And that can be as simple as not building the infrastructure at all and going with, rather than engineered solutions, more of a blue-green approach to infrastructure. For example, not having a concrete pipe but naturalising an area of stream to cope with stormwater and flooding. It saves a lot of carbon. And then the other part of the Section 17A is to look at the funding options for water and wastewater services. and that was also touched on in the annual plan process, and there was a resolution out of the annual plan for staff to go away and develop a funding options paper to feed into the long-term plan process. So that work is also underway, and that will come back to you. Moving to the Three Waters bylaw review. So the Three Waters bylaw review has been underway for some time, and you'll be pleased to know that it does touch on sediment and erosion control and what we can do through the stormwater part of that bylaw. So there is some work going on in there, as well as using the existing instruments that we have. But one of the things to note is that we are proposing to split that bylaw. So to have the water and wastewater bylaw as one, and then to have a separate bylaw for stormwater. And that's partly because of the complexity of the stormwater work and the requirements of the new comprehensive stormwater discharge consent, and partly so that we can manage the timing. So if we split it, we're very confident that we can bring the Two Waters bylaw to the Three Waters Infrastructure and Environment Committee in October. The stormwater one may be delayed, although we are still planning to bring that one in October as well. Then consult through November and over the summer period, and have that through hearings and back to council for adoption by April 2021. So that's the general program for that, and the recommendation is to split it. Moving to water safety plans. Water safety plans remains a very high priority for my unit, and you'll be pleased to know that rather than one part-time resource on water safety plans, we now have 2.5 full-time equivalents dedicated to water safety plans and the water supply security improvement program. So that has enabled us to get much greater focus on it and move the works along. The other thing that's enormously helpful in that space, of course, is the acceleration of some of the capital works and improvements to our infrastructure with the approximately 40 million of funding that we expect to receive through the reform program. So the focus of that is on the water supply mains renewals and those deferred renewals. We're also looking at some wastewater mains that are in close proximity to some of our water supply wells and pump stations, and where those are in poor condition, they do pose a risk to the water supply. The program for reservoirs and pump stations will be accelerated, so improving those reservoirs, and also the Smart Water Network, which is largely focused at real-time monitoring and demonstrating the safety of our water supply. Other major projects that have been out for community consultation, of course, the Aparoa Wastewater, the final disposal of the treated effluent, closed this week, so closed 23rd of August, and that will go to hearings in October. So we'll keep reporting on that through this report. And of course, some of the new funding is also going to reducing inflow and infiltration in Aparoa and Devotional, so that we can right-size the treatment plants for both of those two settlements. Moving to stormwater and waterways, again, the big focus here is on ensuring compliance with our own comprehensive stormwater discharge consent and working on the stormwater management plan for the Heathcote catchment. And I'm delighted to say, no, he's gone, Dr. Clive Appleton will begin next week in a new role of stormwater implementation lead. So Clive will be leading the implementation of that work and bringing together the various threads of work right across council. And as you've already discussed this morning, we need to be integrated with the building consents unit and their inspections team, with the compliance unit and their enforcement actions, as well as our own planning, design and delivery in terms of the capital works that do this, and also our community work. So in terms of the community work, the Community Water Partnership is one aspect of that, and subsequent to signing off this report, we have also just extended some funding for, we have a member of staff working with schools, so working for I think about 20 hours a week, and working with schools on education and sort of practical enhancement programs around waterways across the city. and that's been funded by the Department of Conservation. Now, that funding ran out about a month ago, and so we've extended it through the Three Waters unit for 3 months. And what we want to do is review that program and see whether or not we can integrate it with the Community Water Partnership and the education and community aspects of the compliance under the consent. So that's it's a small area of work, but has some potential to be quite helpful in that part of the consent. So that work is underway at the moment, and we'll be able to report back on it with our partners in parks.
So Helen, can you just repeat what Clive's new title is, please?
I think it's Consent Implementation Lead, Stormwater Consent Implementation Lead.
Okay.
We did have 3 or 4 goes at what the title was, so I'm hoping I remember the final version.
Oh, great, thank you.
But he will lead and coordinate the work required to ensure that we comply with the conditions of that consent and contribute to improvements in the water quality in our city streams.
Yep, thank you.
And across Banks Peninsula, of course.
Yep. Well, it's our city.
One point I would just quickly add and post this report, but we've just had some very, very good results from some of our partners that we're working with in industry, and I'll call out Metalcorp basically, which is in the Hawesville River catchment. The reduction of sediment that's come off, reduction of heavy metals that have come off their property has been phenomenal, and they've done a really good job. Admittedly, they've invested, I believe they've invested with over 200,000. They've worked in partnership with us, and that's part of, I think, some of the benefits that are coming through from the comprehensive stormwater consent and the additional funding that we've put in there. But I'm really pleased that some of the industries are partnering with us incredibly well, and I'm going to try and pull that results together in a Newsline article, because I do think it's some really good news, and basically it's a really good example of private companies working with council.
Yeah, and stepping up. And that the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee has started an awards program, so if you could keep them connected with anything that we pick up on, hand it through and they'll put them through.
And I think that one is a very good example of the audit and education approach.
Yeah.
So an audit to identify where the biggest issues are and the highest priorities are, and education and getting alongside, particularly the commercial premises, is yielding great results. Not just for stormwater, but also for trade waste, and of course for drinking water safety, where we are requiring a much higher standard of backflow prevention across our network. So we do need that audit, education, and get alongside and support particularly the commercial operations across the city.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, have you finished your speaking to your report, Helen? Is there anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah. And I've got Aaron first, and then Anne, and then Jimmy.
Yeah, just on Dave's point, do we put forward companies like that for awards, like is there national awards, or can we give them like a civic award, or?
Well, just see the zone committee's running awards.
Or even in the Champion Canterbury Awards, there should be something along these lines.
And certainly I'm going to look at that. If there was a business environmental award, they would be someone we could nominate to put forward. The results have only come across my desk in the last fortnight, so we are thinking about where we could get the maximum publicity for the good stuff that they've done. Yes, so certainly awards would be a good way to go.
Yeah, each year there's ones that come up like Isaacs and Nitrates when they did their entire site redevelopment. There's a number of them come up, and it should be supported and encouraged.
Yeah, or do we partner with the zone committee and help them deliver their awards rather than reinventing?
This is obviously the Hawesville sell one rather than the West Melton.
True.
I think it needs to be larger. Even the conversation with the Champion Canterbury Awards, like if we want an environmentally sustainable city, should be an award there where someone picks it up, takes away the big one each year in front of all the other businesses, because that'll make others look their game.
That's good. Anne, and then Jimmy.
I'll say exactly the same thing, because I was thinking about the gold star on the recycling things and thinking something similar. So I think it's a really great idea, and I think we should really acknowledge those industries that are doing such a good job. It's fantastic. So I had a couple of questions, Helen, about you mentioned Clive's work in bringing together the compliance team, sort of getting that connection happening. So I don't know if you saw the email come through from Matt Smith about his concerns that groundwater, when construction's happening, there doesn't seem to be any sort of protection when they hit groundwater and all the rest of it. So I've sent that through to the Office of the CE just to get a response. But would that be the kind of situation that Clive would look to kind of, you know, improving so that there is that connection between the different...
I don't know because I haven't seen the email, sorry.
Okay.
I mean, there are already fundamental rules in the district plan around earthworks and depth of cut and volume of material removed that trigger consent requirements, and I don't know if it's about that or what it is.
It's about, it seems to be sort of situations where, say, a subdivision, people are working on a subdivision and they're hitting groundwater and there doesn't seem to be any assessment that's been done at that time. So, and it's about working with compliance team as well as, you know, other teams.
Yeah, we're certainly happy to have a look at it alongside the consenting and compliance people.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll come to you, Jimmy, but I was going to actually bring that up too under your comments on page 89, where you work over the last 2 months has included detailed analysis and drafting bylaws provisions, including for erosion and sediment control during earthworks, protection of source water, and you've put aerial application of chemicals. I was wondering, is that the only thing we're looking at to protect our source water?
No, that's just one example.
And
that's a particularly important one on Banks Peninsula, where we've got farmland surrounding some of our water catchment areas.
Right, and so the issue that Anne's talking about has been raised through an email today is during construction or developments that the groundwater is being exposed to contaminants. So is that it's a district plan RMA issue, but it's not covered in our bylaws?
So it's not about not being covered. It's about ensuring that. So there are rules in the district plan, but it's making sure that we have complementary provisions in our stormwater bylaw to ensure that we comply with our own consent.
Yeah.
Right. So there's some quite detailed work being done there to make sure that everything's joining up. So what's happened with the comprehensive consent and with the changes to the Land and Water Regional Plan, this council has picked up responsibilities that were previously carried out by Environment Canterbury. And so we need to step up in terms of our resource and our capability to deliver on that. And there's some work going on in that space.
Right.
And that will continue. So there's a stepwise process for the implementation of this, working with Environment Canterbury.
Right, and so do we have sufficient resource?
That's what, I can't answer that question yes or no, sorry. That's what the program of work working with Environment Canterbury is, to ensure that we have sufficient resource and the appropriately skilled resource.
Yeah, because when we're getting letters like this saying that...
Yeah, I'm sorry, I really can't comment on that, and I'd rather take that offline until I've seen the letter, and then I can provide a proper reply.
Yeah,
let's do that. That's great.
If you could do that, that would be fantastic, through the Office of the CE maybe, and send it to everybody. That would be fair.
Yeah, well, it'll be either us or consenting and compliance or enforcement, depending on what it is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jimmy.
Okay, thank you. Regarding to the water safety plan, particular emphasis the audit, those that are kind of the drinking water assess. I just want to know what's the time frame for those temporary coordination will be removed.
So the time frame for the water safety plan for is.
It mentions one still open.
So it's on page 92.
Page 91.
So the water safety plan for Akaroa and Takamatua is going to be submitted in September 2020.
Yes.
And then the one for Wainui in November, and the one for the city, so for Christchurch City and the Littleton Harbour Basin settlements, is December 2020. So until that water safety plan is submitted and approved, we will not be able to remove the temporary chlorination.
Okay, but how about the other area? It's not in this area, not the Littleton, not the Central City. The other area at the moment still temporary chlorination 0.2.
That's right.
Those
That will
still-
stay
Yes.
until the new water safety plan is approved.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yanni?
So we have to do those little settlements. We have to do the water safety plans for those before we can take chlorine out in the city.
We have a timetable for doing them, and the reason for the Akarau and Takamatua one going first is that was the first one submitted in the last round. So we submitted it and we had comments back, and then we withdrew it formally, and now we are getting ready to submit it again. So that'll be the next one that is ready.
Right.
We're working on all of them in parallel.
So I think that's
So just
Yanni's
at a high
question, is they have
level-
to be all or none, you know, you can't have one piece.
So when do we think best case scenario we can get chlorine out of our water?
That depends on whether or not the water safety plan for the city, which will be submitted in December, is approved.
And why is it taking so much longer than what, you know, we sort of, I mean, I guess I'm just trying to understand, like, why is the water safety plan taking so long? It was almost a year ago that we submitted it before Christmas, and we were hopeful, and I know it wasn't approved, but why does it take another year?
Not only was it not approved, but there were a large number of recommendations and non-conformances that require an enormous amount of work.
So they're all explained in the report, Yanni, the work that we're doing.
Yeah, so that work is underway, and also it has taken us some time to get the appropriate people resources on board as well to do that work. So work is underway, and I think for I used an analogy talking about the water safety plan with someone a few weeks ago that it used to be like getting a warrant of fitness for your car. Now it seems to be like getting a warrant of fitness for a Boeing 737.
Yeah.
The bar has moved so far, I'm not sure we can even see it, let alone know how much it takes to get over it.
Okay. So with the new legislation, there is an exemption regime for residual disinfectant.
That is a proposed bill that has been introduced to Parliament. It is not legislation yet. So there's a bill before Parliament as part of Taumata Arawai.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you'd still need
about an exemption regime.
You'd still need your water safety plan approved.
Yes, you still need a water safety plan approved. And in fact, it looks from the bill as though the water safety plan is the mechanism for the exemption.
Yeah.
Right.
That's key.
So, I mean, I think it would be good. I just looked online. We haven't put an update out since the 22nd of April on the water supply around the chlorination. Are we able to put some information out in simple terms to the community over what's being done, what the reasons for the delay, and what our new sort of aims are? Because I mean, I just think, I just think,
yep, we can do that.
We've just kind of stopped communicating around it, and it would be quite.
And there's probably
good.
Reasons for that, Yanni.
So there was a newsletter to our water supply mailing list this week, but that was mostly on the water reform. But certainly, yes, we can do one on the water safety plans and the timetable.
Well, and maybe the website just needs updating. Maybe it doesn't have the latest updates. But
the website in terms of the map and where the chlorine levels, what the chlorine levels are at each pump station.
I think Yanni's wanting
that's updated.
The milestones we have to achieve to get the water safety plan is probably what you're after on there, isn't it?
We can do that.
And can I ask, secondly, on the consenting. So we've been told that there could be a trigger for a no surprises. This is on page 6 of 38. That there's 5 individual condition grades related to inadequate erosion sediment control. Currently work through no surprises policy and has potential result in enforcement action. Can someone just explain like what that is? And like, I guess, you know, with Living Earth, which is mentioned there, which is great, we've had a lot of detailed information about what we're doing, but with this erosion stuff and sediment, I just had no idea. So
yes, so we've got a memorandum on exactly this case drafted, and it's going to David Adamson today to be signed off, and it'll come out to councillors this week.
So this is
an update on exactly this.
Our resource consents and our whatever we're doing.
One of our resource consents, yes, is
under risk in terms of not complying.
That's correct, and we'll get a memo to you this week on that.
Thanks, Helen.
So it is drafted, and it'll be with David today just for sign off.
And I just wondered whether we could put a resolution because there's no reference to the integrated water strategy in here, and it seems kind of a bit weird. So could we just maybe, I know you've said you're going to report on that now regularly, so could we just put a resolution to sort of note that? Would that be okay? Or?
How do you want, what's the wording?
So what we said is part of the meeting yesterday around the water reform. Yes, so the integrated water strategy has those 3 main implementation plans, and the water supply implementation plan is in draft, and we'll bring it to the October meeting of Three Waters Infrastructure and Environment. So at the moment we're just working through that draft with the Runanga, and particularly to incorporate some of their suggestions around looking at the needs of small communities and the options for small communities.
Yeah.
And I haven't confirmed exactly what all of the issues are, but I think some of the issues are the areas where we have zoned in the district plan for Papakainga housing, but those areas are not serviced. Yep. So we need to look at those issues as well. So it's not just current settlements, but also future development possibilities. Yep. So that work needs to be integrated into the water supply plan, and we're working with Shane and the Runanga chairs to get that through, and then the draft will come up to Three Waters.
I guess there was a lot of stuff on the integrated strategy that wasn't so much about spending money, but was around communication, awareness, engagement, forums, etc. And I just don't have any visibility of where that's been picked up. Is that going to be picked up in the implementation planning, or is that going to be sort of above that?
So we have, because the integrated water strategy is such a high level strategy and quite broad, we're doing 2 things. We're doing the formal implementation plans for water supply and wastewater and surface water, stormwater, but we're also going to put together a matrix across all of the 4 goals and the associated objectives, and develop some measures that we can report on regularly, so we can pull the whole thing together. Okay. Because as you say, there's so much that's going on. We work with the zone committees, we work with Environment Canterbury through the Water Issues Management Group, we work with the Canterbury Mayoral Forum on broader issues, and we need an overview of how all of this is affecting progress towards our ultimate goals, and most of those are around improvements in surface water, improvements in security of supply, improvements in environmental performance of our various wastewater systems. So yes, we do need to have something that reports on, are we, with all of these areas of activity, are we actually making progress towards the goals that have been set out in that? But
also, I guess what came through in the hearing, that the community felt that water was such an important issue, but there lacked a kind of ongoing engagement. Now, you've talked about engaging with the Papataku Runanga, which is great, but there was also a kind of desire, I think, for an ongoing series of explaining to the community workshops or forums around what we're doing in the water space, because people just don't feel that they can comprehend it, because we don't. We've obviously got lots going on.
So we've been working with Environment Canterbury on the refresh of the zone committees and the refresh of the Canterbury Water Management Strategy, and we do see the zone committees as key to that. And as part of that, there is a recommendation that in terms of Three Waters and my area of work, that we have a regular representation at the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee, and we have agreed to do that, and in fact I'm presenting to the Zone Committee on Thursday on the Three Waters work, just an overview of what we do. And we have undertaken to attend those committee meetings and work much more closely with those committees in terms of the community outreach. How all of that exactly stitches together is a job for Dr. Appleton. And the schools partnership that I talked about before is a part of that puzzle as well.
Yeah. Some good stuff going on. Helen, I've got a question about the reticulation renewals on page 107. And so it's a $171 million project, and it will be completed by financial year 22. And do you foresee that the reticulation network will be the next cab off the rank in the requirements for the water safety plan, and will this project get us there?
So Okay, so if we come back to the water safety plan and the potential exemption regime,
Yeah.
one of the things that was flagged, if you like, in the review that we did a couple of years back, looking at systems in Europe, one of the indicators of whether or not your network has sufficient integrity to operate without residual disinfection is the leakage rate. And the leakage rate in our network has been increasing year on year since the skirt repairs were completed.
Yep.
And this program is directly aimed at improving that. So as we follow up with the backlog of reticulation renewals, the mains renewals and water supply, we will improve the performance of the network in terms of leakage. But that's not the only aspect of it. It's also associated with the smart water monitoring, because the smart water monitoring is not just water quality, it's also the pressure and flow of water and the water balance for the network, which will help us more precisely locate major leaks and fix them. And that does two things: it reduces the leakage in the network, and it also reduces the likelihood of a break and an outage and an interruption to service, because we also have a higher level of interruptions to service in our network than we would like. And then there's another focused leak detection program across the city that we want to increase resourcing into and follow up repairs. So it's not just this on its own, but it's this in association with some of the other work
but
that we're doing.
this is a massive project.
This is 78 odd projects. So this is a program of work for water supply renewals. Yes.
And will that be like most of the work that needs to be done in the water supply renewals?
It's what's on budget at the moment.
Right.
How much needs to be done is another question entirely.
Right. Okay, thanks for that. Mike?
Thank you. Just got a question, page 105 on our agenda, 21 on yours, around the new water supply wells. And I note in there that the Belfast well is planned to be completed this month. So I'm just wondering if that has been done and whether the other two that are due in the next couple of months, Preston's and Grasmere, are also on track for those target dates.
I have to come back to you on that, sorry. So Belfast, Preston's
and Grasmere.
That's great. And when you come back, can you just include the whole committee in that response, please, Helen?
Certainly.
Yeah. Melanie, did you have a question?
Yeah, with the all the work to get rid of the chlorine, because I'm starting to get a bit confused about what we actually need to do to get to there. So it's the water safety plan, and it was lifting the wellheads initially. So do we need to fix the entire system to get to no chlorine, or is it just the plan that's important?
Thanks.
And having a plan of how we're going to get there.
It's both. So so yes, the wellheads were the initial trigger for the temporary chlorine, and then we were asked to revise our water safety plan in the context of the new framework for water safety plans.
Yeah.
When we revised our water safety plans, the issue of backflow and the condition of the reservoirs tipped over into an unacceptable risk. Previously, those risks were assessed
we've talked
and
about
regarded as acceptable. Yeah, so we have to do the work to resolve those to meet the requirements of the revised water safety plan and have that revised water safety plan approved before we can remove the residual chlorine.
But like what we've just been talking about with reticulation, all that doesn't need to be done.
I can't answer that question.
It probably will be, Melanie.
I don't know in what's in the minds of the assessors when they look at that water safety plan.
But as Helen says, the bar has been raised so incredibly high, and it will be high to qualify for an exemption as well. We've often been quoted the Dutch model or the Netherlands, and their bar is so high to have no chlorine. But you know,
but it's also the smart water network. So the smart water network, so if we have real time pressure monitoring, flow monitoring, water quality monitoring, we will know if there's any change, which is so there's a bit of a mantra about change precedes contamination. So if there's a leak or ingress of water
Yeah.
or a loss of pressure or something like that, then we will detect that and we can immediately respond to that. So that's another barrier, if you like, that real-time monitoring and assurance of the quality of the water.
So with what Yanni asked about putting stuff on our website, I think we have to be exceedingly, and you will be, but careful about exactly what you put. Like if you're going to put a date for when we're going to put in our water safety plan for Christchurch Littleton, for instance, you don't want to say, I'd be a bit woolly about it. Although I guess it's in here, just
It is
in
in
case.
here, yes.
Hey,
I do
people's hopes
apologise.
up.
Catherine, have you got any questions? I've been ignoring you. No, okay. Anyone else got any questions? Oh, Catherine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I haven't been ignoring you. I did kind of forget a little bit because I haven't chaired the meeting. You okay?
No questions from me. Thank you.
Great. Anybody else got any? And welcome, Leanne.
Just coming back to your question, Melanie, I think it's really important. Helen made the comment that we're not sure where that bar sits. We will certainly, as we put in our water safety plans, put in our monitoring results showing why we believe the risk is acceptable to take it out. But Helen can't read the minds of the regulators, and the regulators aren't giving us a very clear picture of where that bar is at this point in time. And I do think that maybe with the new water regulator bill going through, and it's admittedly only gone through the first reading, they may also be a little bit wary on that, would be one of the things I'd say. So we're working with them. We are sharing as much information, and we are sharing particularly around why we think we've got a low risk. So, but we can't enforce what they decide, if that makes sense, or we can't, Right. So that's why Helen's a little bit difficult to commit.
So, Anne?
Yes, along those lines, thanks, Dave. Just wondering, when you're saying we submit them probably the end of this year, the water safety plans, any idea how long it will be before we get any kind of reaction from them, response?
Last time it took 3 months. I don't anticipate it'll take that long this time, because what we're doing is addressing their recommendations.
Yeah. And Mike?
Thanks. So when we submit these water safety plans, because we did it before and they came back saying, look, no, this fails. When we resubmit it, is it to different people or is it the same people? Because is it just someone else's opinion of where we need to improve, and every time we may get someone different who has a totally different opinion on what we need to do?
Usually it's to the same drinking water assessor, and however, the water safety plan for the city, as you know, went to a panel of 4 drinking water assessors and 1 lead assessor, but my understanding is that it will go to one of the members of that panel for assessment for the second round, for the city's one.
Okay. It just seems it'd be a little bit disappointing if we're doing all this work after we've been given information for it to go back and then say, oh, actually, no, we've changed our mind, we want you to do this as well. And
No, my understanding it would be the same assessor, or one of the same assessors, yes.
Right. So, Anne, have you got some?
Sorry. Just back to the CCC Newsline and update on chlorination. This is a comms question really, but the information there is actually from last year. So if we could get a CCC Newsline, I know we talked about it earlier, but specifically on where we're at with chlorination, it would be useful for people to be able to see. And also, just, with all the stuff we're talking about with water and the MOU and all the rest of it, would it be appropriate for comms, do they have a package around this, in terms of because there's a lot of concern about the MOU is going towards privatisation and all the rest of it. Is comms really actively involved in that whole sort of, as someone said before, just all the water stuff, kind of clear messaging?
Yes.
Great. Okay, thanks.
All right, so if there's no more questions, can I have a mover for Helen's fabulous report? Anne, seconded Sarah. Sorry, Jimmy, I just saw you a bit late. Is there any discussion or debate or comment on that? Jimmy?
Okay, thank you for the staff regarding to this kind of a comprehensive report. It's pretty good. But I am only concerned how to strengthen the communication with the public community, because we are all aware regarding to those temporary coordination will be removed. Probably 1 year ago, and we postpone. It looks like, but we have to, comply with all those the drinking the water the assessors, to meet their assessment, meet their needs. That's crucial. But how to strengthen communication, it's a challenge for us. Otherwise, this is one of our, our ratepayer and our resident community, the satisfaction, the one key issue. Whether it's possible, if like a staff mentioned earlier, you confirm 3 months, after 3 months, all those one will be approved by the assessors, whether we can put on the news line, now on just three months, and all those template, the coordination will be removed to give the kind of public community more confidence, and so give the council more confidence. Is my particular concern. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy, and I think we all agree with that. It is complex though, and we've got a lot to convey, so it's how we do that. Did you want to say something? Okay. So we've got not just water supply, wastewater, stormwater, surface water, groundwater and flood management all in this report, and we can see the multi-million dollars that we're spending on all of these things. I mean, look at 171 million on the reticulation, all those flood basins that we've done to clean up prevent the flooding in the Heathcote, or at least ease it, and also that helps to prevent sedimentation as well. So I don't want to hear comments that we're not doing enough. We can always do more, but I really commend the team, the council team, on everything that we are doing to fix these, as I said before, retrospective problems that are so challenging. So, thank you for your report, Helen. I think it's brilliant. When I first looked at it, I thought, oh, heck, this is incredibly complex and long. But I think, it's better to have this information and we can ask you questions on it, which we have done today. So it's a very good report. Thank you. So I'll move that report. Oh, has it been moved and seconded? It has, hasn't it? Yeah. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. 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 Opposed. That's carried. Can I suggest we take 10 minutes now, perhaps come back at 11:15? Is that? Yeah. Sorry for... And it's 11:15.
This hasn't been updated because we haven't got it.
So we might kick away.
And it's saying it's going to take that whole profile. It looks like
So we're now up to item 14. And we've got Emma Davis and Diane Schillander going to come to the table about this one. Welcome. And I guess kicking off, do you want to just give us a brief outline on your report, although I'll take it as read? And I know this was due to come early, pre-COVID, I believe, and it's been delayed because of that. But we're here today to discuss this, and yeah, if you could just kick away and give us a bit of a run. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you, Chair. So the background to this paper was in April last year, 2019. Staff were asked to go and have a look and investigate the merits of a water conservation order. And that came about after a suggestion from Aotearoa Water Action. They presented at an earlier meeting suggesting that the water conservation order may be a mechanism for protecting our aquifers. So we initially reported to Council, and it was asked that we provide some more analysis on the merits of a water conservation order. So this paper was prepared. It was prepared for a March meeting, and then with COVID it's been delayed. So we've recently sent out an update with the latest information, which is mostly around some progress with some of the statutory work that's been undertaken. So overall, our recommendation is that the Council not pursue a water conservation order as a mechanism. The reasons for that is when we look at other water conservation order applications, we can see that they are incredibly time consuming and resource intensive. And we think that there are there are other regulatory instruments that we could actually use and would be better to give effect to looking at how we can protect the aquifers and our water. At this stage, there have been no water conservation orders granted for groundwater, although there is an application for Pupu Springs, which is going through the process, and that's currently with the Environment Court after the Special Tribunal recommended a water conservation order. But again, it has got different elements to it than what we would be seeking in terms of the protections for the aquifers. One of the particularly complex aspects of this case is that it's hard to actually define what the water body is. And so the geographical area spans not just Christchurch City, but also Waimakariri and Selwyn. So that would make it incredibly complex to actually define the water body that we are actually seeking a protection order for. So our recommendation is that we use the other statutory instruments at national level and the local land water regional plan to advance the measures that we need to put in place to protect Christchurch's groundwater and aquifer system.
Thank you. And just on the, when you say it's complex because it's hard to define the boundaries, that could be overcome by putting in a joint application with the other authorities?
Absolutely. So if the decision was to do that, we would need to work across with those other districts.
But the rest of the report would still stand that it takes a long, long time, and it's fairly unsure that it would be a successful outcome anyway. But that would be the way to overcome that kind of
yes, that would be
problem.
that would be a way. Absolutely, working together with them to make a joint application.
Yeah. And so the Te Waikato Pupu Springs, where's that now? Because that's been 2 years since the hearing, hasn't it?
Correct. So the special tribunal that heard the submissions and the evidence
came out with their recommendations in March this year. And that was published and is available online. There is a period of time after which a special tribunal's report is released that there can be submissions on the recommendations in the report. And in this instance, there were 10 parties that made submissions on the special tribunal's recommendations. Those submissions then go to the Environment Court. So the submissions closed on the special tribunal's recommendations in May, as I recall, and it's basically, the ball is, as it were, in the Environment Court's court. At this point, the hearings have not yet been set by the Environment Court to hear those from those 10 parties. There's a outline of the process of how that all works in the report here. So what will happen is that the Environment Court will hear the submissions. The Environment Court will then make its own recommendations, and those then will go to the Environment Minister. The ultimate decision maker is the Environment Minister.
And so that application was for, obviously one of the key features is the water body has to have outstanding qualities and demonstrable, and obviously the, hang on,
outstanding and
Waikato
intrinsic
Ropupu
value.
Springs have, and I would say that our aquifers have too. But there are other, I think you've said in the report that the water conservation order is really more about protecting the quantity of the water than the quality. Is that fair to say?
Certainly for some of the other water conservation orders, that would be certainly true.
Oh, okay, but they're more surface water, aren't they?
With the Pooper Springs water conservation order, in the first instance, what the applicants were seeking was to prevent further degradation of the springs and its unique clarity. It is a unique water body, not just within New Zealand, but internationally, and is recognized as such.
Yes.
Groundwater, and it's the aquifers, the Arthur Marble aquifers, which are part of the water conservation order application, are part of the application because it's that water that feeds into the springs.
Yeah.
But in the first instance, in a way, it's the springs themselves that are intended to be protected, and then by extension, the water that supplies those springs.
So in a way, you could look at what we're asking for here is, and it did come from the nitrates issue, the nitrates incursion issue into our aquifers, is that's what we're looking to protect, and it would be subsequently dealing with the pollutants, the contaminants that would threaten that would actually be addressed inadvertently to protect our aquifers.
Yeah, potentially.
So you're saying that we'd be better to use other regulatory instruments, and I think what we're seeing and the frustration for us is here we don't feel that they are working to our advantage. So is there any way we can strengthen, or is there anything else that we can do to bring this to the light?
Well, there is one thing that, as you were alluding to earlier today around the government's action for fresh water.
Yeah.
One of the, so there was a whole suite of actions that the government was proposing in the September consultation document, one of which has to do with amending the national environmental standards for human drinking water sources, which hasn't come through yet. So one of the things that the government was proposing was to include explicit contaminants of human drinking water, and they specifically called out nitrates in the discussion document. We haven't seen that come through yet. They've been quite focused on three major instruments: an amendment to the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management, a new National Environmental Standard for freshwater, and then stock water exclusion regulations. And that's all just come through and will be coming effective next week
Oh,
So,
really?
Yeah, September 3rd is when those three instruments become effective. One of the interesting things about the change to the national policy statement for freshwater management is the fact that the national bottom line for nitrates in surface water has changed and is now, I don't have it in front of me, so it's my memory. I believe it's 2.4 milligrams per liter nitrate nitrogen, which is considerably less than what the national bottom line had been under the existing 2017 version of the NPS. So that's a fairly major thing right there.
So is that still measured on an average or a median?
Yeah, yeah.
So that means it could be as high as, I don't know what, 6?
Well, I mean, you're talking about a median, so I'm not a
I know,
freshwater ecologist, but yeah, your high could only go so high if your median is set that as low as it is.
I mean, it's fair to say that focusing on those three is actually going to protect the drinking water anyway. The NPS, the NES and the stock water exclusions, they're all going to help protect the drinking water anyway. So, and when you say the human drinking water aspect is coming up next, does that give us an opportunity to feed into that or make comment or?
Yes, so I expect they certainly indicated this in the consultation document last year, that there would be further consultation on changes to the NES for sources of human drinking water. So I would expect that they will be consulting arguably after the election if this current government comes back in. Not sure what will happen in terms of what the government will look like, but if there is going to be a change to that NES, then there would be a public consultation, and I would expect that we would want to make a submission.
We will, definitely. All right, thank you. We'll open up for questions, Anne.
I'm particularly interested in how we protect our aquifers and wondering if you've given, I mean, apart from the statutory stuff that you've alluded to, is there an opportunity, you know, sort of for us as a council to have a sort of a champions group or something like that to set up to just particularly focus on our aquifers? Would that be useful? Is there anyone else doing that?
Well, I am aware that, and maybe David might speak to this. Through the mayoral forum, there are a number of sub-forums, and one of which has to do with drinking water. So from that perspective, even if they might be focused on the more infrastructure side of things, I would expect that protection of the drinking water source would also be part of that discussion, but I would defer to David on that.
Do you have a comment there, David?
Sorry.
Does the mayoral forum have a particular focus on drinking water as opposed to just infrastructure for groundwater?
At the moment, yes, it is on infrastructure basically for drinking water. I think though that there are mechanisms. If you have a look at the recommendations that came out of Havelock North, there are, and Emma, you touched on it, that there's going to be new environmental standards. They are actually going to flow right across to look at that protection of groundwater. There is some work that got referred to today done by Otago University at the moment around nitrates.
That's on the link to colorectal cancer. Yeah.
We are also currently submitting on the Land and Water Regional Plan, and as we've had conversations with ECAN, it's about having a collective voice around that as well. And, you know, we've talked about having further conversations with them, and at the next co-governors forum we talked about getting a update from a technical expert so that we've got a really good understanding of the issues as a basis of sort of champion both at a central and regional level on these issues.
Yeah. I mean, the big issue, the big debate is that maximum allowable value for nitrates. And I think that when I asked Helen Beaumont the other day how long that research work would be on the link between them, how long's a piece of string, you know, so I don't know when we're going to see that, and that could be key to actually getting any changes, although it is heartening to see that that has been lowered in the healthy Action for Healthy Waterways document, which is something.
I'm thinking too whether through the Water Zone Committee, so we talked about having representation on the Waimakariri, and so that would be an opportunity in that committee and forum to advocate for the interests around protecting our
But surely the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee itself can submit to the Waimakariri. There's one I think they have made comments.
Yeah, back when the Waimakariri Zone Committee was doing their ZIPA, their Zone Implementation Program Addendum.
Yeah.
Yes, there was a letter that went from the chair of the Christchurch West Melton Zone Committee to the chair of the Waimakariri Zone Committee.
Yeah, requesting that they lower the MAV for nitrates. And the response, what's happened?
Well, that was basically, it was a submission, as it were. Yeah. You may recall that the City Council also made a submission on the ZIPA. The Zone Implementation Program Addendum is used by staff at Environment Canterbury to then work on changes to the Land and Water Regional Plan. Most of those would be specific to the sub-regional chapter for the Waimakariri Zone, which they have done. That's part of Plan Change 7. There was 3 parts to Plan Change 7, and that was the Part C. And that's currently in progress now.
They take so long. And we made a very, very strong submission to Plan Change 7. We made some strong requests there, so...
yes, and
around
that's
the
at the
nitrates.
hearing stage now. We're expecting hearings to be before the end of the year.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, it's been delayed, I suppose, as usual. Any other questions from the committee? Leanne?
Just a couple. I mean, you refer to the possibility of the change of a High Court decision on Aotearoa Water Action judicial review, but as we know, that was unsuccessful. And I saw a press release from ECAN in relation to it, but I didn't actually see, given that the council made a contribution to the cost, are we getting an update on that?
Brent and I just spoke about that, so we understand that AWA are not progressing any further with their action.
So is there a report being prepared for council on it? I mean, it doesn't have to go through the committee, presumably, although it was a contribution that the council made. So I think as a matter of due process, there should be a report back on the outcome of the case. Because this was actually primarily the reason for wanting to consider this option, which is that there are. It was the existence of consents that were no longer being used that went with the land when it was purchased and then repurposed.
That's right.
For water bottling as opposed to the industrial purposes that it had before. And given, I've just been out this morning to the recycling plant, with the fantastic announcement by central government to make a significant investment into Eco Central, which is great for the city, and actually great for the country in terms of the environment. But, the production of plastic bottles, and, I know that the focus has been on this particular one, but Coca-Cola does it with the power, whatever it's called, the bottles that...
Powerade.
It's not Powerade, is it?
Oh, Pump.
The pump. There we are.
Pump, Pump. That's Coca-Cola, bottled in Christchurch, sheer plastic, sheer waste. So
your own bottles, Sam.
And so it's
recycled. It's great.
Yeah. So I'm just making the point that it was a bigger issue than just the
just the water.
Yeah.
I think there was the LGNZ remit recently.
Yes, that'll be effective, I'm sure.
Yes, now. But anyway,
sorry. But anyway, so that's So the idea of going down this track was absolutely a right one, but I do agree with the recommendation that, unfortunately, this particular approach may not be the solution, but it still could be, and this is my other question, which is in relation to 6.4, which I was quite surprised to read, that according to this paper, there is, it doesn't involve a significant decision in relation to ancestral land or a body of water or other elements of intrinsic value, and therefore does not specifically impact mana whenua, their culture and traditions. And given the entire debate that we had yesterday, I just find that extraordinary to suggest that this has no impact on mana whenua. And I would much rather that if we had gone down this track, that we would be doing so in partnership. So what sort of discussion did you have with Ngāi Tahu in relation to this paper, and I guess in particular to Ngāi Tuhureri, but your comments about Selwyn might suggest that the area is a little bit further than just Christchurch and Waimakaweri.
Given we haven't had any discussions with Ngāi Tahu on this, and so that was on the basis that we weren't recommending to pursue the water conservation order, but we take the point, and certainly if we were recommending, I mean, it would be absolutely necessary. And but yeah, in this instance, we didn't have any conversations with them.
Yeah, I think just for noting, and this did come up yesterday,
yes,
and which is that phrasing has been dropped into documents without consideration given to the impact, and the reality is that this should have been involving Ngāi Tahu from the start. So even if we requested this, so we're going to have to find a better way of writing resolutions at the beginning of a process, so that any discussion about whether we would have wanted to consider pursuing a water conservation order should have engaged our partners right from the get-go.
I think that where staff are coming from is that they've responded to our request in a kind of a legislative way to say, look, because of these things, it's going to be very challenging to do this, so we're recommending don't. If the recommendation was yes,
which is
they
why,
would have,
I'm saying that that's unacceptable. From a council's point of view, from a governance point of view, we're talking partnership, we're not acting partnership. And if we're going to act partnership, and what I took responsibility for it, and I said it wasn't the staff's fault, that the council, from a governance point of view, when they write these recommendations from the start, we need to identify that they have to reach out to our partners right from the outset. So this should have been a conversation with Ngāi Tahu from the start, is the point that I'm making, because it may be that they would have found that there was considerable research and analysis that's already been done in relation to what is a significant body of water.
Yeah. And I guess it's, we need to fix that somehow, don't
Absolutely, and we're certainly, in terms of thinking about the work that we're doing across the strategic policy realm, making sure that we give much earlier consideration, and we're much more aware, and thinking how to do that. So the point.
It's walking the talk. Yeah.
And just, we did have an apology for Shane today. He's off-site today, so that's why he's not here, but we will update him on this agenda item. Yeah.
Just on that, the resolutions you passed yesterday will actually encourage and give us a lot more opportunity for those conversations. We have had them quite extensively over the comprehensive stormwater consent, and we've had them a number over Whakaraupo, including meetings on the marae, and obviously as we've worked through the drinking water one. So I think that forum around the whole of the water area, and that's not necessarily the only area that Ngāi Tahu is interested in, we're certainly expanding far more into that field than we have in the past, and certainly I think with Shane's help we'll take every opportunity we can to work in that field.
Okay, and I'm just wondering, Leanne, you might be able to give me some guidance here on the mayoral forum currently not focusing on the drinking water. Is there anything that we can do to facilitate that?
In relation to
groundwater protection, our
groundwater protection. The Environment Canterbury is the lead on that, and of course we're all involved through the zone committees.
Yeah.
So I don't know what.
It doesn't seem to be on the radar. They're focusing on infrastructure but not, perhaps it's not the place for it.
No. I mean, it's not correct though.
It's just.
I mean, it's not that they're not focused on it. I mean,
Well,
there are many different elements. I think the question that was put to Dave was, what was the focus of the drinking water, sort of the subcommittee that's been set up.
Yeah.
But that is specifically in relation to the three waters, and it's specifically focused on drinking water. So of course it's focused on infrastructure, but it's a separate issue from the Canterbury Water Management Strategy, which is owned by the Mayoral Forum. So it's not right to say that we don't have an interest in.
No, it wasn't that we don't have an interest.
Focus.
I think it was more of a focus, but.
The committee that's been set up is purely to focus on the challenges we've got over the next 12 months of looking at these restructures. But like you say, Leanne, and I'm not sure, maybe Emma can help me here, but certainly the tools of the regional council have got around the regional management of water, and also the regional policy statements and the land and water regional policy statements. Those are the big tools that would give us the regulatory control if we knew what that regulatory control limits should be and how we do it. That's my reading of your report, and I think that it is part of the work. I think we will need to have that conversation in a region, because I imagine Ash Person will get quite upset.
We also wrote to the Minister for the Environment and asked him to adjust the drinking water standard for nitrate. And I mean, you'll probably recall this, but the message that we got back was that they would they'd set up a who was it, the guy that's gone into the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet to assist with the research. Remember that there was overseas research. Sorry, I'm scraping in the back of my mind now.
So we've set up, the government's authorised a survey in Otago that's in process now. No, it's Otago
Was that
University.
the follow-on from the Dutch?
Otago University are the lead on it, but it's to do a New Zealand-wide.
Yeah. But we don't know how long it's going to take,
No, but we need, if we want the World Health Organization to change its standards, then we need a model to support the. Sorry, I can't remember, what was the country that did the testing?
It was the
Denmark, right. So we need another country to match what Denmark did, and New Zealand is ideally placed to do that.
Yeah.
So, and that's what, as I understand it, is about to get underway. I don't think it has actually started, has it?
I believe it has, isn't it?
I couldn't
That's
say
separate
for sure,
work
but I
down
believe that
at
it has
Canterbury,
started.
at Otago.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing where we can influence is through the National Science Challenges. And so we are working with, across those programs, around areas of research interest. And so Marion Schoenfeld, and we're sort of having better coordination to make sure that we can feed in where we can work in partnership with them and do, undertake a study in a sort of an applied context that would be useful for us as a council.
Right, and I think that would be a really good noting thing to put in here. And is there any kind of updated memo you could give us from time to time if there's anything?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah? Yep. So how would we word that note? The committee notes that City Council is working with the National Science Challenges.
Yes, because and we actually, again, we had initiated to actually host a workshop across all of the different streams of the National Science Challenges here at Council. It didn't go ahead because of the disruptions, but we're still very keen to do that.
Great.
And that will really ensure greater two things: coordination and sort of applied research with an applied and academic focus. So we think that's an exciting opportunity.
Right, and is that focusing on nitrates?
Well, a variety of things across natural hazards and, all of those sort of issues that are important to us.
Right.
So we can look at I just need to check my recollection of what we had in terms of nitrates.
Yeah. All right, that's good. All right, are there any other questions on the report? You happy to move it? Thanks, Jake. And James will second it. Is there any further discussion? No. Well, thank you very much for doing the work on the report, and it was very interesting reading. Actually, I think I learned a lot through that, and it's also providing us focus on the regulatory tools that we do have, and the processes that we can use to actually make our voice heard. And particularly, I mean, in the zone committee workshops the other day, we've been having workshops, and it's about how zone committees can sort of be more effective with their messages and being heard. So I think we've got to strengthen the zone committees and work together really strongly and be on the same page about this stuff, which I think is happening quite well. It's all about partnerships and collaboration. So have we moved and seconded? Yes, we have. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. And just before we close the meeting, I'm just wondering, Leanne, you mentioned the Eco Central this morning that you went to the announcement on behalf of council. Is there anything, can you sort of give us a bit of a heads up on what...
So the Christchurch optical sorter plastics will receive government funding up to 1.8 million, and the Christchurch optical and mechanical sorter, which is for fibre, up to 15 million. So that's two projects funded up to $16.8 million, which is a fantastic outcome for the city. And what this will do is that it will enable Eco Central to sort through the plastics in a way that will ensure that that we can separate out the 1, 2 and 5, and can I repeat 1, 2 and 5, and everyone, can you just tell your residents only put 1, 2 and 5 plastics into the recycling bin. It was an extraordinary visit out to the Eco Central today. I picked up an entire wrapped in plastic copy of the press. And so somebody's thrown it directly into the recycling bin without taking the soft plastic off it, and heaven knows why they're using soft plastic, but it was something I will talk to them about. But the whole thing into recycling. Now, the trouble is that a soft plastic travels along when it's being sensed is like paper, so that's why it doesn't always get picked out. And they said that they get heaps of those, so people aren't even opening their papers before throwing them into the recycling. So we need to do better ourselves at the front end, and I'm sort of saying to people, you know, remember 1, 2 and 5, and maybe it'd be a good idea not to buy stuff that's in any other number. Not that I'm going to repeat any other number except for 1, 2 and 5. And the other one is for optical and mechanical sorter of fibre, and that's your papers and your cardboards. And the reason for doing those is that if we're going to use overseas markets, which we must do, then we have gone from what would have been 10 years ago an acceptance of 10% contamination to 0.2 or 1 or so it is less than 0.5% contamination is now acceptable in markets, and as a result of that, I think it's really important that we give them the opportunity to be producing high quality fibre for recycling. So this will really help to take us into the 21st century when it comes to recycling, and a world-leading capacity, so that's good.
So a lot of it will be used for a new facility or additional facility?
They will have to build additional space in order to house the two facilities separately, the plastic and the fibre.
Well, that's great news. And of course, we've got our waste minimisation program running alongside as well.
Yes, I did mention that in my speech today.
Oh, did you? Good.
Yes, very good.
Oh, well, thanks for that, Leanne. All right, well, it's a good meeting. Thanks, everyone. I think we got through a lot of interesting stuff, and I'll pass to my trusty deputy to do the closing. Deputy Dog.
Kia ora tātou, peki mi whakamutu, kei te karakia, ka whakairia te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia tūruki whakatā ai, aumi, hui e.
Thank you. Awesome.